Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose.
So with that, welcome back to season 2, episode 2 of Pain with a Purpose, with Samantha Knight, right? I just threw your whole government out there. So sorry about that. But yeah, so where are you from?
I have a few last names, by the way.
Okay.
Funny story.
We'll get into all that.
Yeah. I was born in Arizona.
Okay.
And I was raised in Arkansas.
Wow. So thank you so much for coming in straight from Arkansas.
No.
But no, right now you're in Florida.
Yeah,
right?
in Florida.
I assume that you landed in Florida because you probably suffered like I did in the past. And we'll get into all of that, but I really do appreciate you making the trip because I know you don't have anything on the agenda up in the tri-state and you just came up for the podcast. So that's huge. And shout out Jackie Lewin for, connecting us because really I don't know you from a can of paint.
Nope.
So I really do appreciate you like getting uncomfortable, the whole nine. So walk me through it. You were born in Arizona. When did you go to Arkansas?
So I got to Arkansas like pretty early on in my childhood. I grew up there most of my life. I got there probably at the age of 7. And from the age of 7 until the age of 23, I lived there. So I did all of, elementary, middle school, junior high, high school there.
Yeah. Young adulthood, the whole nine.
Everything. Yeah.
Burnt your life to the ground there, or we went to a different location for that?
We burnt my life to the ground, or I burnt my life to the ground there. And more so when I got to Florida.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty interesting story. So you didn't you're not like a one time.
No.
Okay.
No, I've been trying to do this for years. Yeah. So, I first got down here when I was 23. Mm-hmm. It was like my first experience in anything really. Like I had no idea what I suffered from, like alcoholism. I had no idea about drug addiction. I came down here like without a birth certificate, no social, no ID.
Really?
Yeah. My father, who got me down here, mm-hmm. I actually didn't know him for years either. I thought somebody else was like my dad.
Okay.
Yeah. So he got me down here.
That's interesting. So we'll dive into all that.
Yeah.
How did that happen? So you said that you thought somebody else was your dad.
Mm-hmm.
One day he just kind of came to the rescue and was like, hey, I'm here to, or how did that happen?
So eventually, I grew up, Wheeler is my other government last name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who I thought was my birth father for years. Lo and behold, my birth father was in prison for a very long time. So I actually met my biological father in Arizona State Prison. I went to go visit him. My mom obviously wanted me to have nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And I found out around the age of 13 and I went to visit him. And then, that kind of wildly enough started that relationship.
Yeah.
I got really heavy into, I think my first drink was at 8 and I really started drinking at 13. Started hydrocodones at 16. Point of that being is by the time a friend of mine had reached out to my biological father, I was so deep into everything that, I needed help, or I was in the hospital with AFib. I think I had a stroke at that point.
And how old were you then?
At that point, I was 22.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about everybody else's story. I know that a lot of people are still struggling and coming into treatment and coming in and out and stuff like that. But I was fully addicted in high school.
Yeah.
So when people were you're doing so well for yourself, I'm like, dude, I did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
I was a full-on drug addict at 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just didn't know what I was actually struggling with. I just thought I was like physically addicted to something. I didn't know that, like, you know, everything that we learn outside of like a podcast episode, right? Like everything I learned in AA. I had no idea like what I actually was fighting.
Yeah.
All right. So dad helped you out, got you into treatment. You still have a relationship with dad?
Yeah. I mean, my father is like the main reason that I'm, you know, other than God, living today.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you got to Florida when?
So I got to Florida at the age of 23. I had just gotten out of the hospital. He showed up in Arkansas and he was like, "You're coming with me." That was obviously like a full on brawl. You know, I didn't trust him, nor did I need to feel like I needed to be in a car with him going any amount of miles. Yeah, I got down here. I went to detox for the first time. At that point, I had been so heavily involved with like intravenous IV use for, you know, heroin. I think the first time I used heroin intravenously was like my 21st birthday. That was like my celebration.
Yeah.
And I was like on and off of Suboxone for years. So the first detox I ever had was like the worst detox I ever had. And I was a cash pay because my grandfather passed and my dad just wanted to like help his little girl, right?
Yeah.
And so he put me in there. Like I said, I didn't have insurance. I didn't have anything. And that was the worst detox of my life. I was in and out of the ambulance every night. You know, the heart rate was so high that they would have to like slip nitroglycerin under my tongue to like slow it down.
So you mean like while you were in treatment, they still had to like send you out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so bad.
Yeah. It's wild. I do remember like the first time, were you coming off Suboxone at that time? So when I was like 19, 20, I don't even know. Everything kind of merges together. I was coming off of subs for like 18 months. I was on them. But as you know, like I wasn't taking them as prescribed.
Yeah.
I was just taking like, you know, whatever I had to not be sick. And then, you know, after I was done work, do whatever I wanted to do. But like that was by far the worst like detox. It was like 30 days of like not being okay.
Yeah.
The worst part is that I stayed that entire treatment and I left a lot of treatments. Like left early, AMA, whatever they called it. But I stayed the entire time and I was like, okay, I finally feel a little bit better. But then I had no idea. Like I wasn't going to AA when I left. But as soon as I felt better and I was like, okay, like I'm good. Right. But I had no idea that like my alcoholism was kind of really starting at that point. Yeah, which is wild. All right. So you went to treatment for the first time, got sent in and out, right? Dad was there to help you out. Walk me through the next like couple years. Like, what did that look like?
And honestly, same thing that happened with you. You know, the second that I thought I was better, because life was easy. Like I went to, once it was, you know, gone, it was like 90 degrees in maybe August in Florida. And I had like, I remember Uggs on, Reebok sweats, a hoodie, like it just wasn't going away. And like the only thing and truly that was like my first, you know, moment where I took somebody's advice ever in my life. And they were like, just stay a few more days. It's going to get better. And I just didn't believe them, but I had nowhere else to go. And it did. It got better. And then from there, you know, my dad was supporting me at that point. And I went into one of the homes and I lived and I went to the groups every day and I didn't have a car. I got a bike. You know, I would run to the groups. I worked at a diner. And it's funny because like at that point in my life, I feel like I was the happiest I'd ever been, you know, and I felt better. My dad had got me this like 94 Lumina, if you even know what that is. It's
exactly
like a Simpsons car. And I took that
But you
Lumina.
were living though.
Yeah.
Like that was your first car. Like, yeah, you were fine.
It was great, you know? And I took it and I drove it right back home.
To Arkansas.
Yep.
It's not around the corner.
No. And it was like I had to fill up the car with water and it was like overheating.
Because it was overheating.
Yeah.
So my first car was a Buick Century. And my wife like breaks my balls about it all the time. So the front windows didn't go down. Didn't have AC. So when we were like balling on a budget, living in a recovery house, when I would go through the drive-through at like McDonald's or whatever it was, I'd have to roll down the back window and then like pull the seat. Like, yeah, we all started somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like the happiest I had ever been. Because it was mine. Like as much as or as little as I had, like everything that I had was mine.
Yeah.
And like mine the right way. Like I didn't like scheme for it, like it was kind of the complete opposite of like the life that I thought I wanted. But I was content. Yeah. So I mean the Lumina's nicer than the Buick Century. What color was it?
It was white.
Was it tinted?
No.
Oh,
I think I
got mine tinted the whole nine.
I didn't have it long enough.
I put a system in it. I was like the man in a recovery house. I was so corny. The stuff that we used to do. So anyway, I digress. All right. So you had a brand new Chevy Lumina.
Mm-hmm.
You were balling on a budget. And then, okay, so walk me through like what happened.
I thought I was good.
Yeah.
Again, I had no idea like what I was up against. And I took that Lumina and I drove it. And I sold it to a chop shop in Alabama for $100. And I had somebody drive up and pick me up. And I used that $100 on, my next drove.
To do whatever we wanted.
Yeah. I made it to Arkansas, which was like no man's land, by the way. Nobody wants to ever go to Arkansas.
Yeah, so I tried to do some research on you before you came, right? Okay. I called Jackie. I was like, hey, give me the grease. Like, what's this Sam girl about? And she told me you were from Arkansas. I was like, there's nothing to talk about there. Like, there's nothing there. So yeah, I can only imagine like what that's like growing up there. I mean, especially being you're in Florida now, right?
Yeah.
Completely different. Like you're in paradise now. Over there, it's not the same.
It was just like a black hole. Yeah, I made it back there and just right back to it, I was like dating my drug dealer at a point and, that never is good.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, those were my first real consequences is when I got back. I ended up like with the wrong people at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. And I had called for help again. I wanted to get back to Florida. I think I made it like a month down there. And I just was ready to come back because I remember it was good here or in Florida. And I ended up with the wrong people on the wrong night. And truthfully, like what we did, if we're being vulnerable, like we did like a home invasion. Mm-hmm. So there were like multiple charges that were caught. I mean, that was like a tough time for me. I'd never been in trouble before. And the first time I got in trouble, I had like 6 felonies that were pending under me. Yeah. And so I sat in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Dad bailed me out and I got back to Florida and tried again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been, to this day, I suffer those consequences.
Yeah.
I don't suffer any felonies now.
Mm-hmm.
But I am still actively, seeing somebody once a month to make sure that I'm in line.
Listen, I have like some of like the coolest people in the world, the most genuine people in the world. Like when they were jammed up that I have in my life, right? When they were jammed up, like I can Google them and I'm like, this is you. The truth of the matter is like, that's not us. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you did too. Like I always had the best intentions in the world. I was raised, the right way. I know what's right and wrong. And, like the list goes on. But like, I just, like you found out, when we got sober, right? Is like, I just didn't have the power to carry any of that shit out.
Yeah.
I always go left when I'm supposed to go right. All right. So get me to the point where you actually, like you got sober, right? Yeah. What did that look like this time around?
Sure. In and out for years. Right. And, at that point it was like I was a lost cause. Like you had tried so many times and, the last time, right, I had picked up something I had never picked up before. And it was like, it brought me to my knees. Like I would have done anything to get it. And, I checked into, a place called, am I allowed to say the name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I checked into First Step. And it was a totally different experience. I'd like to stay, say I stayed sober there, but I got out used again after 90 days. But my last experience using this time, and this is like the longest I've ever had, which is just a blessing in itself. It's the longest I've ever had. But I was in an Airbnb, and, there's been times that I've lost everything and got it all back. Well, I didn't have to do that this time because I tried all of those roads. And I was in somebody else's Airbnb using, and it was like a Tuesday at like, I don't know, in the afternoon, like 2, 3 p.m. And I just wanted to call somebody, and I had no one to call. Anyone that I would have called, they were all being productive members of society.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have answered my call anyway, or if they did, it was out of pity. They felt bad for me.
Yeah.
So I called Jackie, because Jackie's been there through this entire, last couple of years. And I called her, and I was like, you know what, Jackie, I think I'm going to get an apartment. She was like, what?
Great idea.
I'm like, what? And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. And she's like, no, you're going to come to our house. You're going to come to Jessica's house, and you're going to live here. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see that being a good idea. Like, you're my sponsor. That's like a conflict of interest. And she's like, no, you're going to come to the house. And I checked into the house, and I remember walking in there, and she was like, you're going to get sober here. And at that point, I just didn't believe it, but
I mean, why would you at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had been through so much shit doing this, like, in and out for as long as you have been, like,
yeah,
it's understandable.
Screwing so many people over, just whatever I needed to do to get the next one. And I couldn't hold my head up at all at that point. And, I checked into that house. I put all my stuff in there, and I started there. That was like the first time. I think there have been times where I really wanted this, but I didn't do anything that I was asked to do.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay honest. I was just a liar.
I mean, furthermore, like, I never wanted to do any of the work. Like, like, not only did it seem really corny to do like the 12 steps, it just was like, I just have a problem with like putting this substance into my body. Like, what is getting brutally honest with somebody really going to do for me? It was pretty clear in my head that if I just don't put it in me, like, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
The issue is that, like, I can stop. I just can't stay stopped. So when you got to the house, like, what looked completely different, or nothing looked different, and you just continue to take suggestions?
I think at that point, I had tried everything the way that I thought it might work. And at that point, I was scared to lose the little bit that I did have. Because I had burned it down so many times that I know what that looks like. And it's like me sleeping in my car.
Yeah.
Or like locked in a hotel bathroom sitting on the floor. And like, I had just done that so many times that, and Jackie stuck by me, so I was like, I'll just give this another shot. And, I built that relationship. That was like number one for me, is like having somebody that I could go to, that I could trust.
Yeah.
Somebody that I could tell something to, and it may not be like the best idea in recovery, but like, they're not going to
judge us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really important for me. And then I started taking the steps, I started doing the steps, honestly, for the first time. And I made time for them.
Did you ever do the 12 steps and like not have an experience with them? I mean, well, obviously, but like, did you ever go through the steps previously?
Once. Yeah.
Okay.
To what I thought was my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time. And my goal at that point was just to check the box, to get through them. I thought I was going to be good when I got through them.
Yeah.
I didn't sponsor anybody, which is, the biggest point, like the biggest part of it. And to carry the message. And I didn't do that. And I was right back out the door.
Yeah. So the first time I went to the recovery house, it was very much, and that's not, I don't ever want to like shed like a bad image on like the recovery house that I went to, but it was very much a thing. Like, you had to go through the 12 steps. If you didn't go through the 12 steps in like a timely manner, then like you were going to be like held up. And if you didn't continue to do the steps, you were going to be asked to leave, even if you weren't like using.
Yeah.
So like I remember like going through them and like not doing anything that I was supposed to do on the back end. So like when they said, "Did you make that amends?" I was lying, right? Like was I praying? I wasn't doing any of the stuff. And I was living like a scumbag. So like on top of all that, right? Really, the fuse was lit. I just didn't know it at the time. So like it's good to talk about because like you can go through the 12 steps and not have an experience and still go back out, right? Like the steps are meant to be like experienced. And if we're not doing anything behind closed doors when nobody's watching, like we're really just hurting ourselves.
Yeah.
Sounds good on this end, right? But like any given day today, like I can still not be doing anything. And that's just the truth. There's days where I wake up and like I work a stressful job and it's like I just run on self-will and like I get stuff done, but like my day is shit, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm probably causing harm. I'm probably talking to people the wrong way. I'm full of like anxiety or like I'm irritated, whatever. Luckily, right, like that obsession to use has left like a long time ago. But I do know that if I stay doing that long enough, it's going to happen again.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's keep it current. Where are we at with everything? So you got sober. We went through the 12 steps. What's life look like now?
It's funny you say what you just said too, because there are days that I wake up, right? And it's like not something that I want to do sometimes. You know, sometimes I like look at this and I'm like, man, I wonder what it would be like to just like do whatever I wanted to do. And I know what that looks like, right? But there's still times where I'm lying to myself. And today life it's good. You know, 90% of the time. That 10% though, like it'll eat you alive if you let it, if you aren't doing what you need to be doing. Because if I am not spiritually fit, you know, if I'm not doing like an inventory at night, if I'm not helping another person or going to my meetings or, you know, keeping in contact and staying honest with who I need to be honest with, then I'm very quick to lose that connection with God. And I'm very quick to be filled with anxiety and, you know, my life being driven by 1,000 forms of fear. That's so real, you know, but if I am doing what I need to be doing, I can handle anything. Yeah. Which is really cool.
It definitely is. I mean, it's like part of the promises, right? But it's something that I always wanted for myself. I just never thought that I would ever achieve it. Side note, when I was talking to Jackie before this, she did give me the hint that you love to travel. But furthermore, like, interesting enough, like by yourself.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. I mean, I don't know if I would ever travel by myself, but like I also envy it because it's like you got to be really okay with yourself to like travel by yourself.
I love it.
How did you get into all that? Other than like sleeping in your car and like doing all that stuff. Like how did that even happen?
You know, I don't know. Like I think that so I love coming up here too, right?
Wild, but okay.
I know everyone that is, and I'm not from here, so everyone's like, that's so weird. Like that sucks. That place sucks. And I'm like, no, I love this place.
We really don't have much, but I mean, we're a cool sports town, but other than that,
I love the weather this time of year, but I think the reason I travel by myself is just because I can be with myself today. And that is like crazy to me because I used to have to like be in the know and I had like the FOMO of like missing out of what everybody else was doing. And I wanted to be like, you know, I was like somebody that you could come to like find the party and like, you know, all that stuff. And I was just talking to my friend about it. She's like, it's so cool because you're like one of the only people I can bring with me. And I know that you're just going to be fine. You know, at the hours I'm at work, you're just going to be in Jersey, like frolicking around, you know.
I thought you were talking about like the directions part because like you guys were not fine getting here. But yeah. But no, I mean, that's the ADD kicking on. But it's actually, I mean, I do envy it, right? The fact that you're able, she told me you went to the Keys recently, right? I actually, all thanks to sobriety, I was able to take like my mom down there. It was just her and I. She doesn't get out much, right? So we went to the Keys and like she clearly drinks. I don't. And I was like, listen, just get loaded, do whatever you want to do. But talk about like a gratitude moment, right? Because it was like, I can't do any of that shit if I'm not in the center of my recovery.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, like I said, it looks like me doing absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes it's me, sponsoring a bunch of guys and talking to a bunch of guys and like doing a lot of like sitting quietly by myself. But I have yet to get to the point where I travel by myself. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I really do.
So you go back to Arkansas?
No, God.
Like by
No.
So where else have you gone? Like by yourself?
Honestly, most of the time I go to like Philly.
Okay.
Because I like Center City. The
Mhm.
food up north is like just so much better than the food in Florida. And
I've heard that.
It's a fact. Yeah.
Which is wild because I feel like a lot of people from up here have moved down there. So why wouldn't they just bring like everything they know from here down there?
They probably try to replicate it.
Yeah, I guess it just doesn't work.
Maybe it's just because I live there and I, enjoy being Florida's hot. It gets so hot. I like to be, somewhere where I can like bundle up and I can like look at the lights and I can feel like crisp air, but I've been to Arizona, the Keys, here, Philly, and like up north of Florida. I'm still like, slowly venturing into like my traveling.
Would you ever by yourself go overseas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah.
I have to wait a little bit.
This is true. Yeah.
But I do want to.
I mean, listen, stay sober. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Eventually you won't have to like check in, right, with somebody or whatever the case may be and be like, hey, I'm just thinking about going here. Even though they would probably let you go, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I have still yet in this bout of sobriety, which next month it'll be 10 years, God willing. But like I have still yet to go. Thank you. I've still never left the US.
Me neither.
So we'll get there at some point. I don't even have a passport yet, but we'll figure it out. All right. So to keep it, I know that we already said like keep it current, but so are you like sponsoring girls? Like what does that look like?
So, which is such a miracle, right? Because I just feel like God does have like a sense of humor. There's so many things in my life that I always wanted, right? Kids is one of them. And we're not there yet. And my first sponsee, she came from an adolescence home. She's 14.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah. It's really cool because, I mean, talk about like your first sponsee ever being 14. Like now I literally have a child. Yeah. That I'm walking through life with. Mm-hmm. I speak to her mom too.
I almost feel I was going to ask that. Like, I assume that mom's probably like checking in, like, hey, is so and so really, actually with you? Mm-hmm. Unless she's actually like doing really well, then mom's probably not or doesn't have to check in. Was that difficult though? Like early on, like talking to, for all things considered, a kid about like some really deep stuff.
Yeah. However, like I feel as though the more vulnerable I can get with her, the more vulnerable she wants to be with me. And there's things, she doesn't want me to tell her mom, like, and kind of I'm not the police, I'm not here to, which is what somebody told me, I'm not going to like spread your secrets. Like we're here to trust one another and like get through this together. Yeah. Because it really is crazy how they say like, they're going to help you more than you help them. And that's what this is. She is like a blessing in my life. And I want her to get it, and I hope she does. But yeah, it was definitely hard in the beginning just because I don't know how to respond, to someone that's not my age or, quite literally a child.
I mean, even seeing somebody walk in at that age to like a meeting, I would have taken a step back, like, holy shit, like good, first off, good for them that they're even there. But like, I said it before, but I just thought that this stuff was so corny. So the fact that she actually like got a sponsor is wild. Yeah. Like it wasn't until like I had tried every single way until I eventually was like, all right, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Yeah. So good for her.
Yeah. And to be that age and like to go to school and to go to, IOP and then to do the steps and to go to the meetings and, that is just like, that's my life except for much older. Like that's how busy my life looks.
Yeah.
You know, up at 4 a.m, not in bed till 10:30, and that's what it looks like for her.
You're at 4 a.m.
Oh yeah. So that's another.
So that's
story.
a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Are you one of those people that's like, well, I got up at 4,
No.
so I got more time than you?
Well, yes, that's important.
Okay.
My day is halfway done by 9 a.m, which is pretty cool.
So what's going on at 4 a.m.?
I'm at the gym by 5, so I got to get up. You know, I got to get out of the house at like 4:30 in the morning. I train with somebody at 5, 3 days a week, and then I train somewhere else on the weekends. After I train, I go pick the girls up. We go to a meeting at 7 a.m. every day. Most
That's
weeks.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, and then from there, I drop them off and I go to work, and then I'm at work until like 6, sometimes 7. And
Okay.
then I, go back to the house and.
So obviously you care a lot about the gym. I do as well, although like I'm in like this really weird rut where like I just have no motivation to go at all. Like there's been times where like I'll miss like 1 or 2 days a week, but like we're going on a solid 3 weeks right now, which is just not like me.
I've done it.
Well, after the episode, I'll ask you like how you got out of it, but are you like a firm believer that like that plays a huge like part in your mental health as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like we definitely don't talk about that enough. And it's why I'm so close with a lot of like I have a really close buddy of mine that owns a gym, and in like a nutrition shop, and he's not like us. But like we've built this relationship where it's like, dude, like I have to stay close to like the fitness community. Like it does so much for me. Did you always realize that? Or like, when did you get into like actually training training almost with like a purpose?
Yeah. There's definitely a purpose behind it. I got to a place where I was so unhappy in sobriety with myself that it was like let go or be dragged almost, and I say that because it was like I could either do something about it or I could just continue to get worse. And like if I'm in sobriety and I'm miserable, probably not going to last long.
Or like, what are we really even doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember like the beginning of my fitness journey, I was like a good 30 to 40 pounds heavier. I would not train like with the groups of girls that would train. I would wear like huge t-shirts and I would train with like the trainer. And even that was hard enough for me. It was like I really struggled in the beginning to even do 10 minutes of exercise.
So what you guys are doing, like you guys are always doing like group training stuff, or?
So like I would go to this gym and there would be like these group of girls, or several groups, right, of group fitness.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed of myself that I didn't want to join them,
I mean, listen, I remember, like you think that everybody's watching you. And then once you become like a veteran, if you will, you realize like everybody's just so self-consumed with themselves. Nobody gives a fuck.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. I'm just looking at myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I started there and I started to like slowly see results. And like once you see results, I mean, you got to be careful too, because it can be a whole nother addiction in itself. Right. And I struggled with that for a long time. Like I was addicted to anything. So it was just like a very long process of learning, because obviously for me, like balance doesn't exist. It's just like something's always taking over more than the other. So, it's just like what's more important right now. And the gym just happens to fit in perfectly. And it's so important for me for my mental health. Like I woke up this morning at like 6 a.m. and went running down the shore. I
wish like I lived close to the beach. Like that's why like you saying you'd like to come up here is just like so mind boggling, because it's like not like I wish they sent me to Florida. Glad they didn't, because I wouldn't have the life that I have today, right? Like I have a very full life, love my kids, the whole nine.
Yeah.
But like you guys get sober in like paradise,
It's crazy.
Maybe not like all of Florida, right? Like there's definitely some rough spots down there, but I mean it's still next to the beach. But yeah, when I got into like fitness and training, and like really training, like had like a guy, I actually started with my sponsee who like taught me everything.
Oh, cool.
Which was a cool moment. But like once I like really started to not be sore and like actually reap the benefits of like my mental health, it was like a complete game changer. And I was more like energized, throughout the day.
Feel
All right.
way
So we
better.
talked about like the physical, right? You talked about God. We talked about the spiritual. What does the next like couple years look like? What does the next 5 years look like? Not to make this like a whole interview.
No, that's okay.
It's like the worst question they ever ask me when I like go for a job interview. They're like, what do you want the next 5 years to look like?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to get a job
no
now.
idea.
I have
Yeah.
no clue. Yeah. So like ideally, what would you like it to look like?
It's a good question. You know, there's so many things that I've spoken about doing, and like I feel like that year mark for me really opens the doors, right? Because there have been so many times that I was like really close and I just didn't make it, right? So I'm like 40 days out, and
which is huge.
It's so huge. It's just like, and it went by so much quicker than I thought it would this time, you know? And the next few years for me, like I could do anything, right? Like I could do anything I wanted to, but I would love to obviously help others, right? Like it's always been like a dream of mine to have my own, you know, sober living, and to eventually do, whether it's in treatment or what may have you, like something in regards to helping like younger girls, which
There's
is
definitely a huge need for it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say younger, you mean like above 18 or like the adolescent type?
Yeah, the adolescent type for me is so important. Just because like the way that they are growing up, you know, if we can like deter them from or like steer them a different direction if possible, and like give them, you know, the relationship with God and like put their hand, you know what I mean? Like things like that. It's very important. Obviously over 18 too.
Yeah.
You know, but that, once I met, like I said, my sponsee, it was a game changer for me. It was like, these are the girls I want to help.
Yeah.
I want to help these girls. Yeah. So hopefully, I'll have a house one day, or I'll work in treatment somewhere, or yeah.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
I've
heard.
Because that is like it's stressful, right? Because like we see a lot of the same individuals come in and out, right? Struggling, which you can relate with, right? Because like that was you. It was me as well. But like, it's tough. Like it's not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where like people, this is my opinion, right? Where people genuinely wanted help when they were actually calling, right? A lot of times it's like, get me out of a jam. And I know that I have insurance.
Yeah.
Whatever. I can get like kind of cynical about that, but like, but we still do see a lot of success stories too. And that's the ones that like kind of keep us around.
Yeah.
As far as like, I don't even know if I'm allowed to ask. So if like you don't want to answer it, just say go fuck yourself or shut up. What was your sponsee struggling with? Because listen, I have twin daughters. They're 7. And your sponsee's what? 14. So we're only 7 years off.
Yeah.
Which I still feel like they were just born yesterday. Like I can't imagine. Right. So yeah, what was she using?
Well, she has a vape dealer.
For the weed?
No, for vapes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that's, you know, one of her struggles. I was like shocked. I was like, you have a vape dealer? And she, you know, uses alcohol. She smokes pot, was doing a lot of Xanax.
Yeah.
She had a problem with the boys. At that age, I did too. Like, which is crazy to think about. At the age of 13, I had a problem with boys, you know, and so, but yeah, that's what she struggles with. She has a drug dealer and a vape dealer, and they are both as
listen, we had runners back in the day, that were getting us alcohol, and they were getting us cigs at the same time. I can't imagine.
Sponsors.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to a few of the local high schools, and like, it's the biggest problem they have, right? Even with the weed pens, where it's like, they're hitting these things in class and like, they just hold it in.
Yeah.
And then they don't know who has it or whatever it is. So it's like a completely different ballgame now.
Yeah.
But you brought up a really interesting point, because I know how addicted I am to this thing.
Me too.
But you talked about like, you know, if we can kind of shift the adolescents to like, because I can't imagine what it's like for them. You know, so like, I don't know what the answer is. If you figure it out, you'll do really well. But yeah, I mean, if we can can't imagine what it's like being her age with all the social media, like seeing whatever her feed is and whatever like she's liking frequently, right? And like
The algorithm.
what's shaping their minds is pretty wild. We could do a whole nother episode on that. All right, so to wrap it up, you went through a ton of pain, right? Coming up on, so you alluded to it, but we're going to touch on it again. So you're coming up on a year.
Coming up on a year.
Which is fucking huge.
So huge.
Which, side note, I think you might be the first guest that has had
less than
like yeah, absolutely. So God willing, you'll have a year, right? So I have faith that you will. So I'm going to be the first one to say congratulations, right? One day at a time.
Thank
you. Before I ask you the closing question, so like, does everything at this time, right? Like coming up on the year, because I know I've said it on previous podcasts where it's like previous episodes, coming up on 10, right? Like I've gotten a lot of crazy thoughts in my head. Not in the sense that I want to use or drink or anything. But definitely the allure of like, I want to go out, right? And it's not like I want to, but it's like this fleeting thought of like, I don't know, like it would be cool to like go to happy hour, right? It would be cool. But like, thank God for like the work that I've done and like knowing what my truth is.
Sure.
Where it's like, I don't go to fucking happy hour. You know, like I get a bottle of like Bankers Club like vodka and drink by myself. So like coming up on this year, do you feel completely different than you have like in the past, that like before coming up on an anniversary, or because this is a big one?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I say that because it's just like the maintenance that is, because it can be 3 days that I don't do something I need to do for myself. And those fleeting thoughts, they come right back, you know, and like they're there, the fleeting thoughts, right? They come, they go. But it's never like an obsession right now. Like that has been, you know, hopefully removed. It seems to be, right? As far as I've gotten this time. But yeah, I mean, it's so quick for me to, especially being under a year, it's so quick for me to like fall right back into those negative patterns. Cause subconsciously, I always made the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
You know, so like that next right decision is so crucial for me, because if that's not what I'm doing, then I am obviously, you know, without a doubt, with as much time as I have, like going to think about a drink or a drug, and it's going to sound a little bit better, but I'm grateful, you know, that I have the support I do. And
well, we didn't even talk about that. So like your previous attempts at getting like clean and sober, you know, whatever we're calling it. Like, did you have the same like type of like female support network previously, or does it look different today? Or did it always look the same and then you just kind of like burnt bridges, or like, what did that even look like?
I've always had like strong support, you know, but I've also had where, you know, people, they had told me they were just waiting for that call. Like I was like of the hopeless variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I've definitely always had like strong support. However, if it's not, and I'm a firm believer, if it's not your time to like be sober, it's not your time to be sober, you know, and there's nobody that can like force that or, you know, project like their wishes on me, because I could want to shake it into somebody so badly.
I mean, how many times have you tried?
Yeah.
Right? Or how many times have someone tried to like shake it into you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth, right? And if anybody's listening and like they might disagree with it, but it's the truth, right? Like I wanted to be sober when I was 19. I didn't get sober till I was 23.
Yeah.
I didn't go to treatment once a year. I went like every 3 to 6 months. And like when I got sober 10 years ago, like I had much more than I ever had when I first started going, or like every other time I went to treatment. Like I still had my job. I still had a girlfriend at the time. I was still allowed to like go back to mom's house. Something changed where I was like, I can't continue to do this. I'm going to go to a recovery house.
Me too.
And I went to a fucking top bunk. I don't think you guys do bunks.
We don't,
right?
thank God.
Yeah, well, we had bunk beds with like 6 of us in a room. And that's just how it was.
Yeah.
All right. So you went through a ton of pain.
Mm-hmm.
How have you turned, like outside of recovery, right? Just like in your everyday life, how have you turned that pain into a purpose?
Outside of recovery.
Or inside, whatever.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I can do, really anything I want to do today, which is really cool. How I've turned it into a purpose is like, I am like worth something today, and that is purposeful for me and it's purposeful for other people. Like I am like depended on today. I show up and I'm definitely hyper productive. Like you won't catch me not doing something most of the time. Can I sit with myself? Sure. But there's, so much that I have to offer now that I am like clean. And, yeah, like I have, like the purpose is that I have a purpose today.
Yeah.
I have a purpose to help others and I have a purpose to, continue doing like what I need to do for myself. And so many things, like the doors just open, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I say it to people all the time, right? Where it's like people that have tried to like overdose on purpose or like, they're like, I don't know why I keep living like this. And it's like, they've made comments where they're like, God doesn't want, like, even God doesn't want me. And I'm like, no, I think maybe it's like, you still have work to do.
Yeah.
Or like maybe there's people that you need to help down here. As much as it might've sucked, right. For you when you were struggling all those years and like, burning bridges and, driving back to Arkansas for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Much like myself, like, I don't know why I went through the pain I did, but like, I'm fairly certain that the pain I went through is going to be able to help somebody. Right. And that's the cool part about recovery. It's like, I don't need to ask why. I don't need to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I can be whoever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
I don't have to like fake it for anybody, which is pretty cool.
It's so cool. And it'll be exciting too. Like I hope one day I can come back and forth between Florida and here and like help others here and bring them back home or help people there and come back here, just anything. Yeah, it's really cool today for sure.
Love that. Anything else you want to like say before we shut it down? Even though this is your first episode, I know that there was like a lot that you wanted to talk about. Anything we forgot?
No, I don't think so.
I'm the worst with names, but shout out your friend for making the trip
with
you.
There.
If I had a cameraman, I would have like went over there. But thank you again for making the trip. I definitely appreciate it. Thank you, Jackie, for putting us in touch.
Love Jackie.
Jackie's great. She's just like the nicest person in the world.
Yeah. She could be not the nicest person in the world.
I haven't seen that side of her. But yeah, she's. I think the first night I met her, she was like late to a work dinner that we were at Alves in the city. And she showed up like a half hour late. I'm like, who is this? Like, who is this woman?
That's and where she told,
and like they told me her like title, and I was like, she's a director, and she's late. Like, what's she doing? But yeah, and then I got my gallbladder out that night, and I was like,
I watched that episode.
It was horrible. Yeah, but I blamed it on Alves. I don't think it was Alves.
No, it wasn't food poisoning.
No, because I think somebody else got sick too. But regardless, I forgot to do the whole YouTube thing. So if you're still listening and you like what we had to say, like us on Instagram, Pain W Purpose, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, Pain with a Purpose podcast. Drop a comment, a like, whatever those people say, right? But by all means, the support is definitely appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you again. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.